Tracks it down in front. Matthews to Marner. Have to hurry. Tim scores. John Tavares overtime winner.
This is absolutely unbelievable by Austin Matthews. A complete turnaround. Take the cake to Mitch Marner.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to From the Booth. I'm John Bartlett alongside Greg Millen. On this episode, we welcome one of the most charismatic announcers probably in the history of the National Hockey League, the longtime voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Mike Lange, who you know, Millsy, from your playing days in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I sure do. I mean, my first play-by-play broadcaster is a player, so we go that far back, and I have obviously a special spot in my heart for Mike, so I'm looking forward to talking to him.
45 seasons with the Pittsburgh Penguins. They honored him in October prior to a game. The legend, Mike Lange.
I was in college and attending Sacramento State University, and I'd never seen a hockey game in my life. One of the guys that was a broadcast major there that year was named Lynn Shapiro, and he said, you want to go to the hockey game tonight? And I went, huh? Hockey game? I don't know a blue line from a red line. I have no idea, he says. You know what, Mike? You never know.
It's a hockey night in Pittsburgh. Tonight from the Civic Arena, the Penguins meet the New York Islanders.
Looking to the net, here he comes. He shoots and scores! Mario Lemieux, oh great, balls of fire. Time runs out. The Stanley Cup has come to the city of Pittsburgh. The 1991 Stanley Cup champions. The Armor Yager.
Ladies and gentlemen, have just left the building.
Yeah! They love it. He's riding down Red Snapper Road. Alexei Kovalev.
Foster Hewitt Memorial Award carries a special meaning to me.
It's a hockey night in Pittsburgh. It's a hockey night in Pittsburgh. And Sidney Crosby has scored his first goal ever in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform. Oh, slap me silly, Sidney. Walking down the slot, wrist shot. Hey! Shoots and scores! Make me 50 milkshakes, Mr. Malkin.
From experience and doing it, you have a good feel a lot of times what might be happening. And I think that's kind of the key to getting better as a broadcaster, and then to be able to implement it and have it come true is pretty special.
And I'll meet you in the schoolyard, baby, for all the marbles. I got the marbles!
Well, that was a tribute video from the Pittsburgh Penguins from a game in October this season to celebrate your 45th year with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Mike Lange, great to see you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Johnny. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
45 years. It's unbelievable, Mike, and I've known you for almost all of them. It's hard to believe, really. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about those early years with Pittsburgh. I know it was a little rocky at times. Maybe the franchise wasn't going to be around at one point. It was something, wasn't it?
You know, it's interesting. I came to Pittsburgh for the 74-75 season. And at that time, thinking back, the Pirates were the big-time feature in this city. University of Pittsburgh, actually in 76, won a national championship. And the Steelers were in the midst, Millsy, of winning 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So here we were, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and here I was on KDK radio trying to make it work. And it actually was the best thing that ever happened, because by those other teams winning, it just kind of bred a little bit of interest, I think, in other teams and everything going on in the city. And we were able to kind of build along the way. It wasn't easy. We didn't draw a lot of people. We fought a bankruptcy in 75. But eventually it kind of got there. And you were a big part of that in the early going with the names that we had. We didn't have much money. We had a tough time putting teams together, but it all kind of paid off in the end. And then, of course, along the way, we moved on into the 80s, and Mario came in and really turned the whole franchise around. So those were some interesting days, lean days for the attendance, but a lot of fun. And, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them no matter win or lose. I was still there and having fun.
Yeah, I just thought about this for a minute. I've got a bunch of the old sweaters behind me, and you'll probably know the story better than I do about, you tweaked my interest when you said that the other championship teams, and we actually switched from the baby blues to share the colors of the other teams. And that was an interesting time and an interesting decision, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and it happened after during the 79 Super Bowl, I think, that the Penguins decided to go to black and gold. They made the move. They made the announcement during that Super Bowl. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, Dale Talon was part of that in the introduction. But so when they made the announcement, all of a sudden, all kinds of hell broke loose. The Boston Bruins and Harry Sinden went crazy. They said, "You can't have black and gold. We've got black and gold." And the Penguins said, "Hold on a minute." And they went back and they found that the 1925 Pittsburgh Penguins, originally in the NHL, their colors were black and gold.
Unbelievable.
And I think they might have been the Yellow Jackets then, the Pittsburgh Yellow Jackets. But that grandfathered them in to be able to have those colors, and everything was denied from the league, and the Penguins kept the black and gold and moved on from that point.
That is a story I never heard before.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
that is crazy. You talk about the history, though. How about a bit about your history? So we know that Sacramento State University, you had never gone to see a hockey game until then, but the broadcast side of things, did you ever have the itch when you were a kid to broadcast? I obviously, I guess you didn't ever think you'd grow up to be a hockey announcer, but what about maybe sort of the roots for yourself in that the broadcast side and how you want to be behind a microphone?
Well, I was, a young kid growing up. I was the oldest in the family. And for some reason, my dad was pretty interested in sports. And we watched a lot of the Friday night fights and some other things. When the NFL came on television, we watched that. But my actual real interest started with a radio broadcast from the old Sacramento Solons. They were the minor league team placed in Sacramento. And I used to listen to those games religiously. And I think you need to know, even in the early years in Pittsburgh, we did radio, just radio. So that's where your sports came from. And I was fascinated by it. And then in 1957, the San Francisco Giants and LA Dodgers moved to the West Coast. And they, of course, put broadcasters on, and it just enhanced everything for me. And so I was listening to games. In Sacramento, you can get a lot of people doing games. I would listen religiously, and I just had this feeling that I someday maybe I could do that. And another guy that was very influential for me was Bill King, who was the broadcaster for the San Francisco Warriors at that time and the Oakland Raiders in the AFL. So those are where my roots came from. I was pretty determined at the age of 9 what I wanted to do, and I pursued it. And I kept going, got diverted a little along the way in other aspects, but I stuck with it, and it actually ended up in hockey, of all the crazy things in the world. And that came from my time at Sacramento State. That's another whole story, but we actually did some playoff games in the amateur league in Sacramento, where I was the PA announcer there, and actually did, in this small building with 400 people in it, 4-on-4 hockey. And I actually, as a play-by-play guy, the PA announcer, that's what he did. That's what they had done before. And so I was calling games while they were going on in the building. And we were able to broadcast some playoff games on our college radio station. I kept the tapes, and I ended up getting a job in Phoenix. So those are how the basic roots of how I got all involved in hockey.
That's amazing. It must be something about age 9. Age 9 was when I first started with radio too. So you never know. Yeah. That's where you get the little itch going. And I was a PA announcer in junior hockey before doing play-by-play. So they always mix, right? They always blend in. Yeah.
Mike, what about, I've never asked you this, and I can't believe that I've never asked you this, because you were my first play-by-play man in the National Hockey League, and I've loved your work ever since. All your wonderful sayings that are so entertaining. How did it start?
Well, that fella that I mentioned, Bill King, used to have a phrase that just sent some chills down my spine. And he would simply say, "Holy Toledo." And it just moved me. And so I never forgot that. I kept saying to myself, if I ever get into this business, I ever get to do it, I'm gonna have something along those lines. So when I first started working and I was able to finally land a job in Phoenix with the Western Hockey League, Al McCoy was the broadcaster there. And they actually hired me to do the PR. And then he said, "Would you like to do the color?" I'm just fresh into hockey and working things. But so I did. And he was my mentor. And he was a guy that used a couple of phrases. And I'm going, it's not unusual then, type of thing. So when I left Phoenix, I went to San Diego for a year and then ended up in Pittsburgh. But I asked Al when he went to the Phoenix Suns, because I ended up being the play-by-play guy there in Phoenix. And still working, by the way, Al McCoy is. He's 87. Just had his birthday last week.
Wow.
Yeah, most tenured guy in the NBA. But I asked him, can I borrow great balls of fire? That was one of his big phrases. And he said, feel free, I'll be getting some new ones for the basketball. So I did. And that was one of the first ones I used when I was in Pittsburgh. And then it just kind of grew. And you have to kind of understand Pittsburgh. Millsy does a little bit. There's some unique figures here. Millsy would know Myron Cope.
Myron Cope,
Prince.
Sparks.
Yeah. These are guys that are just so different. And it was if the guy upstairs, Millsy, said, listen, I got a place for you. This is where you've got to go. And so when I came in, it wasn't crazy where people said, oh, we don't like that type of thing. They actually embraced it. They really became a part of it. And then they started sending me phrases and seeing me on the street and talking to me. And it kind of built from there. So a lot of the phrases I use are from people that actually gave them to me. Some of them are original. Some of them are picked up along the way. There's something I might hear. But that's where they originated from, a lot of them. And it just became kind of I don't want to say a game, but it became kind of an love affair with the city and the people and the phrases. I mean, they were playoff games that even you were involved in, that they were betting at the bars on what I was going to say the first goal. Seriously, I find all this out after, so whoever lost had to buy the round, or so it's kind of grown over the years, and it's been an integral part of my approach to the game, and I love to have fun, and that's if I can do that, I think it makes it worthwhile for people at home.
Are there any favorite stories you have with where some of the slogans come from? If I'm not mistaken, I think it was a security guard gave you scratch my back with a hacksaw, and the kitchen is closed. You actually couldn't get food one night because the waitress told you, sorry, the kitchen is closed.
Yeah, that buy Sam a drink and get his dog one too is one I got from a guy coming into a pub, into a place in Pittsburgh. And he was across the bar from me, and he walked in, and he said those exact words. And I said to him, could you do me a favor? Could you repeat that? And he goes, buy Sam a drink and get his dog one too. He pointed down the bar, and I said, awesome. And I just knew. So I put it in my repertoire. I used it. And usually, you have to understand the difference between then and now. There was no instant reaction that's been written about. It's what they hear. So I didn't get any reaction to this at all from people one way or the other. And I'm going, I guess it just wasn't worth working. So I waited about 3 months, and I came back and I did it again. And it was a different ball game that time. And they started sending things in. But what happens when in those days, when you would say a phrase, they would think they heard it. So they would possibly go to a second time and try and write it down. Well, they would butcher it because they had no idea. They didn't know the exact phrase. And that made it even more entertaining to me. And eventually they figured it out, and they started, waiting for the next new one, if you will. So those are how some of them came about. The big guy left this place I was having lunch at one day. He worked at a car dealership next door to it. And on his way out, a big tall guy, and he goes, "I'll see you later, Michael Motorcycle." Another, say it again with that big drawl. "I'll see you later, Michael Motorcycle." And that's where that came from. So there's a number of them. They all kind of have a little story involved. But they're the fun. They're fun to work with.
What about, you've watched the two probably greatest players in the game, put 99 Gretz in there as well, but there's been a few, but boy, you've been blessed. Very different players in many ways, but very similar in terms of their character and the type of people they are. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about Sid and Mario, if you could.
Well, to me, Mario was, I think you could probably attest to this, having played against him. I think he was the best goal scorer in the game. I know he was, to me, the best passer. But that goal scoring ability on goaltenders to read netminders and just freeze you, just absolutely freeze you and know where you're going to go. He would know. I'd watch games and I'd say, now let's watch on the slow motion. Mario could see slow motion with you guys in that net before it ever came out, before it was ever put in front of people. So, I mean, I just think he was I marvel more at his passes than I did his goal scoring. I mean, he could pass any way you wanted. He could make an 80-foot pass to your stick in stride. He could make a short little dink, boom, 3 foot, right on your stick in motion, continually, over and over and over again. Sid's got a lot of that in his repertoire too, but it's down more in the zone. It's in infighting, if you will. Mario could do it from just the grace and the ability he had to move and just open space up and then make you look like a fool. But Sid works for his. He has to work, but he's always way ahead. He's almost 2 players ahead when he grabs the puck, Millsy, and that's what amazes me. He's relentless, and I've never seen a player that the puck comes to more, but because he's Sid, that's why it does. It always comes back to him. He finds that puck like no other player I've ever seen. And that's where his real strength is to me.
It resonates with me a little bit, Mike, because with Mario, what killed me as a goalie, his reach was so long.
Yeah.
If you played the shooter,
yeah,
he'd come around you. If you didn't, he'd throw it over your shoulder, and not very hard. No. And I couldn't stop him on a breakaway. I had no chance.
And weren't alone. You weren't alone, Millsy.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't very good either.
No.
And for Sidney, I mean, didn't have the pleasure of playing against him, or maybe I didn't want to the way he plays. But I can say one thing, and maybe you watched a lot of practices too.
Yeah.
I don't think I have ever in the National Hockey League watched a player work as hard as Sidney Crosby every day. Would you agree with that statement? I say it often.
Yeah. Every player has an off night. I mean, we all know that. And even Sid has a night that he doesn't go full bore, but it's not without the effort. He is out there, whether it's a practice, whether it's anything. And he's always been like that. He almost thrives on that, Greggy, and he wants to do that. But it's something that it's not new. It's just been with him his whole life, the way he plays the game. And so when they talk about him, it's just Sid. I mean, that's the way he is. And he strives to get better at things. He actually does. He works on little things that people talk about. I remember when he first came in the league, the worst thing in the world for him was faceoffs. Oh my goodness, he had a tough time. And I went to him one day. I said, "It'll get better. It'll get better." And he said, "I've got to learn the linesman." That's the first thing he said to me. That's what I got to do. I've got to learn the linesman. I've got to learn what they're doing. And it just tells me he's thinking way ahead. He came back the next year and was a different player. So those are the little things that he works on continually. And it's amazing to me. And above and beyond that all, as a human being, he may be the best, one of the best I've ever been around. I mean, he cares about people. and it's sincere. It's from his heart. And I've watched him time and time again in situations that would blow you all away. I mean, in the way he treats people continually. So they're both very special people to me, great players, and deservedly so of all the accolades they've received.
Mm-hmm. Great, 100%.
Yeah, I think there's so many stories of Sidney Crosby, of things that he's done that people don't even know or you don't even see. And so what we do see is really just the tip of the iceberg.
You know, I'll relate this real quick story. We won the Cup in San Jose in 2016. After it's over, it's a long, long time before people depart and get on the buses. They all have their families with them. And I was late to the party getting down there. And I got down and I see the bus drive off. And I'm going, oh, boy, now how are we going to get back? And I heard somebody say, they're going to send a bus back. So I'm down there, and there's about 2 or 3 of us that are waiting for this bus to take us back. And out of the back door of the arena comes Sid and a couple of other players. And as he comes out, guess what he's got? He's got the cup. So he comes out with the cup, and he comes down the stairs. He goes towards the bus, and up at the top of the ramp, and you're all familiar with this, the crowd was up there. Let's go Pens, let's go Pens, let's go Pens. And Sid peeked over around the corner there, and he started up the hill. And he took that cup up to those people, and he let them have a moment with it. And it's just something I never will forget. You know, just going out of his way to do that. And they were so appreciative of it. And then we got to the hotel, and he got out, and there was a big throng of people there. He was the last guy off with the cup, let them all get a touch of it and have it. It's just one of those moving moments that, you know, he gets it. He understands what makes it work, the fans, everything involved in why teams win and play for cities and teams. He's just a terrific human being.
On that note, since you're talking about the Stanley Cup win and the one that happened in San Jose, you've had the chance to call a couple of Stanley Cup victories for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Are there any favorite memories aside from that one that stand out in your mind? Because it was kind of cups in different eras. You had the Lemieux era and the Crosby era, but is there anything that stands out as favorite memories, favorite stories?
Well, John, I mean, really, quite honestly, the first cup is the special one. And I'm not taking anything away from the others because I know what it takes to get there. But that situation was bizarre. And the Penguins winning the cup for the first time, try to get home, took the long flight from Minnesota back to Pittsburgh. But in the course of flying, we were told by Craig Patrick that we would not be able to get to our cars, that there were 25,000 people at the airport. They had closed the parkway. People actually left their cars on the parkway and walked to the airport. Then the procedure was, and it was 95 degrees that day, and it was just steamy hot, is to get us to another location. So they filed us out of the airport with people all around us, the old airport, and we got to the buses, and they had no air conditioning. They were school buses. And they drove us, and people were leaping on the buses on top of the thing. The police finally had to tell them, we're going to have to arrest you if you don't get off the buses. So anyway, long story short, they got out of there eventually. One bus went to Mario's house. I wasn't on that one. I wish I would have been. I didn't get a chance to get in the pool.
Yeah, I think the cup did, though.
Yeah, the cup
what I hear.
I may have never gotten out after all we consumed. But the other one went downtown. And the reason it went downtown, we took the back route, was that they figured we could get a ride from there. So they took us to the bus station, the Greyhound bus station. And yes, we were able to get a ride and get a cab ride. This is ticking on to 6:30 in the morning, if not a little beyond that. So they drove me down, and I lived in the South Hills real quick. Came down West Liberty Avenue, the guy did. And I remembered this place called Sips was open at 7 a.m. in the morning. You know, so I said, well, stop there and have one because I know all the workers, the old steel mill days. So I stopped and I knocked on the door, or started to open the door, and it wouldn't open. And the cab driver had taken off. So I knocked, and a guy came to the door. He had a vacuum cleaner, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "You're not open." He said, "It's Sunday. We're not open." Sunday, he says, "Well, come on in." So we sat there for about an hour. I let him go back to clean and took another cab and went home, and then got my car later that day. So that one was so special. And yet everyone, when you get to that point, when you're driving through 4 series to get there, you know what it takes. It's exhilarating, to say the least. And I just wish every player has a chance once in his lifetime to experience it. I really do.
John, you've got a story that I know you want to ask Mike about the microphone.
Yes.
Being a play-by-play guy. So
yes,
I don't want to leave that one out. So
no. So let's explain to everyone. So I've got mine here for demonstration. This is my broadcast headset. You'll see it a lot on TV. It's a Sennheiser MD25. Audio guys love this one, by the way, not the 26. So that's kind of the modern headset. Yours, though, is an original in the fact that how many years now have you had that same headset that you've used? And I know you refurbish it and try to keep it going, but you've had the same headset for years. How old is that headset you have now?
Well, I think it's let's give some credit to the folks that built them. Astrolight. It was an English company. They are mine is open-eared. They don't make those anymore, where you can have sound coming in. They date back to the late 60s. They were used by airline pilots. They were used when the wide world of sports was first in business, when the camera crew and people needed sound to communicate with the trucks. And so they used them, but they were closed in and a different mic. And then the broadcasters saw them. And the broadcasters said, "Hey, if you can do it for that, can you make it for broadcasters?" So they did. And in the 70s, they were pretty popular, and a lot of guys wore them. Gene Hart, take a look when you go to Philly next time. You'll see a picture of Gene Hart with that.
That's right, in the press box. You're right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So they were really, really good, and I really liked them. I mean, I liked the sound of them. I liked what it gave me back from the crowd, being able to hear them. So I kept them, and I used the Sennheisers for TV a lot of years when I was doing simulcast. So I'm very aware of those. But all those headsets I wore are in a garbage can right now, because they aren't made well. They are not. They're not very good. I won't go any further than that. But this one, it holds up. Now, have we had to do some tinkering with them, just from a wire standpoint, and maybe something that was a little bit off? So I had a couple of extra sets that I bought, and we would just take parts from there and put them in. But to me, it's the ultimate thing, particularly with radio now, and that's what I'm doing, and why they're so special to me.
John, how much time do we have? Do we have a lot?
We've got time. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. You got a story? Go ahead.
No, I just want to ask Mike about the game. I mean, you've watched it, change so much from when I was around with you those first early years at Pittsburgh until now. The way it's played. Do you like it? Are you happy with it? What do you think of the game today?
I think it's a different game. I like the aspect of the speed, but I think that we're lacking a little bit of. I just don't want our game to become robotic, okay? And to me, we're kind of leaning in that direction. If you just think of a regular hockey game, it's pretty much dump it in, go chase, and come back out. You don't have many 3-on-2s. You don't have many breaks, that odd man breaks in the game. I don't know if the red line being out of there has been the solve all thing. It brings more speed, but it certainly takes away from the aspect of the human being making mistakes. I mean, defensemen make mistakes. That's how goals are scored in situations, or you're going to be negated on trying to go through the neutral zone. So I'm not so sure that the red line being out of the game is actually better for it. I don't know. Today, though, I like the speed of it, and I like the way almost every player now is right up there and can play hockey and can skate, and I like that a lot. I think that's where the positives are. There's too many face-offs for me, for one. I mean, I can't handle them. I'm in a mood that like to see some of those numbers diminish, and we did it in a lockout year or another time, where on places at center ice when the puck went out of play, last team that touched it, the other team just had the linesman back in their zone, throw the puck back into the zone. You got to give them 20 feet, and they come right up. So you don't have that face-off at center ice. It wastes time to me, and how the game is going. And so we're getting back to where the games are getting longer and longer and longer. And I'd like to see maybe some of that fixed up. But other than that, it's still a pretty damn good game. It really is. And it's fun to watch.
That's for sure. All right, I've got to ask you this one. So Bob Barker, after 35 years of hosting The Price is Right, 50 years on television, still says something he'd get asked about most was his appearance in the movie Happy Gilmore. You, of course, appeared in the movie Sudden Death with Jean-Claude Van Damme in 1995. How often obviously right now, but how often do people still talk to you about that experience, and maybe talk a little bit about the fun that you had doing the movie at the Igloo at the time?
Well, I had a lot of fun because Peter Himes, who was the director, and we were in chaos at that time because the league went to another lockdown, and so they couldn't use the actual players. So he had to be improvised, and I ended up, and that was one of my background things in college, was directing, and they begged me to go into directing, but I did. So we became, I don't want to say close, but we had a lot of conversations about that movie, and I was only going to be in it once or twice. That was it, and Taggy too. But it certainly got more than that after we talked. And so he asked me a lot about hockey and things, and to kind of solve his problems, and able to do it. But I have to tell you, I'm being very honest, I had never watched that movie until about 3 weeks ago. It's the first time in 25 years.
Wow.
No, I'm not one that needs to see myself or hear myself. I'm at home. I can't go anywhere, and it's on. So I turned it on, and I watched it. And you know what? It was better than I thought it was going to be.
That's great. I can't believe
all I know is they keep telling me it's big in Brazil. So that, and about every 6 months, I get a residual check for $1.81. That's it.
Unbelievable.
Being that movie.
Oh, man.
Now, was that not the last time that building had the roof open as well, Mike?
Oh, that's a good question. I think
I heard that, but I'm not sure.
That does sound familiar.
I can't guarantee that I would know that for sure.
That must have been quite a sight to see that.
But it was real close to being, it was real close. And they couldn't open it before they tore it down to even do anything because of the fear of that it was going to crumble. So I think you're probably on the right side there that they were able to do it. So that only last time.
Yeah.
Good point.
Different building too. Building. Unique for sure in many ways.
I only wish we could have built the same thing. You need creativity. We don't.
Yeah.
We need some different things. And that building, players used to talk about walking up the hill and seeing the Igloo with snow on it, and then remind them of. So those are some of the things that the old buildings kind of gave us. Millsy will attest to that. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, you haven't lived till you walked in gate 3.5 in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the Boston Garden, or walking up the stairs in Chicago in that old barn. And
absolutely.
Yeah. No, we all missed. I mean, I still love going to MSG because of that, because it brings you back a little bit, even just that tiny little bit.
Yeah.
The character, the Forum, the gardens, even the old Spectrum in Philly, where you walk down the ramp, where that's where a lot of guys had to tilt the bus to get the Philly flu out. But they all had different character to them, I think, is what it is. Yeah, and the Igloo going up the hill, you're right, had this there it was on the top of the hill, which is now the parking lot across the street. But yeah, had that same kind of unique character to it for sure.
I remember the first couple of years I went into Chicago and the Chicago Stadium, and you had to go a long way up, all stairs, to get to the booth. And you get in there and you're in a seat, but it's kind of hard to see the ice. So what they didn't have any cushions or anything like that. Behind you were a stack of old telephones, and not telephones, but telephone pages. Okay.
Yeah.
So what you did is you went back, and if you needed one or two, take your choice. So I went back the first time and got the book, opened it up, and I look at it, and it says 1937. I went, wow. Now, this is later, much later than 37. So that was one of the remarkable things that I remember so vividly about Chicago Stadium. And they did the job. You'd sit on them and you could call the game, and it was pretty special. So those old buildings do have a little special place in my heart, too.
Yeah. See, all the little character traits, all those little stories. So,
yeah.
Mike, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for taking time to join us. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully it'll be hockey night in Pittsburgh again before we know it.
I hope so. And Millsy, all the best to you. And I'll tell you what a storied career this guy's had, Greg Millen, from battling to make a hockey club in Pittsburgh to going on and then playing professionally for a lot of years, and now your broadcasting career. I'm proud of you, baby. And you didn't play the piano for me today.
No, I didn't, Mike, but I got to tell you, you're a big part of my life, and you were so good to me as a very young man, and I'll never forget that either. So that's
you're
very much appreciated.
All right, Millsy. Thank you guys for having me.
What a treat to have Mike Lange on and hear some of his great stories, and of course the legend of the catchphrases. But I'm amazed that he had never seen the movie Sudden Death, who so many people talk about it, only until a couple of weeks ago.
You know, it's funny. We get all these interesting stories throughout our broadcasts here, and that was certainly one of the many that Mike just finished telling. I mean, I thought that was terrific work, and he's a legend. He's been around for so many years around the Pittsburgh market. He's huge there, and boy, I enjoyed that.
Only one thing left to say on this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building. See you next time, everyone.